Hello, and welcome to this current event. Here's some international news. Eastern Ukrainian separatists engaged in heavy artillery fighting with Ukrainian troops near the city of Donetsk on Sunday. Artillery was heard from outside the city and around the area of the airport, which has been the location of many battles before, and the fighting happened a day after monitors had seen a large convoy of unmarked tanks move through eastern Ukraine. The sighting of the large group of tanks came a day after Kiev, Ukraine, had accused Russia of sending tanks and heavy artillery over the borders to the rebels, which Moscow has actually denied. Both Kiev and pro-Russian separatists have accused each other of undermining the September peace accord. Although Kiev has vowed to uphold the peace agreement, the military deployed more troops to eastern Ukrainian cities last week in anticipation of attack by rebels. President Barack Obama was in China Monday for the second time, as he met with the Chinese president for the first time on Chinese soil. The two men met to kind of rebalance the foreign policy between the US and China, and a big portion of what they talked about dealt with economic growth, reducing tensions, clean energy, and empowering the Chinese people. They even mentioned big subjects like ISIS and Ebola. But a big portion of what they talked about was about trade. Currently, American leaders expect to engage in negotiations on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a trade agreement between the US and 11 Pacific Rim countries, not including China, which is the region's biggest economic powerhouse. Instead, China is part of a rival economic coalition that in turn excludes the US. People have brought up the illogical properties of these two arrangements because the two big key economic players are in fact China and the United States. Hopefully the meeting between the two presidents clears some of this up, although China has suggested a trade agreement that involves the US, we have been hesitant to act upon it. As you can see here, this political cartoon is about the speech Obama gave after midterm elections. He didn't give a sign that he would accept major revisions to his healthcare law or change his mind about immigration or consent to Republican demands on energy and the environment. Then he made no notions that the White House would work effectively with a Senate that had a majority of Republicans. The most famous lines are when he said,
"So to everyone who voted, I want you to know that I hear you.
But then he contradicted himself a bit by saying to those who didn't vote,
I hear you too."
Obama seems like he just doesn't want to accept the Democrats' defeat, and he's really choosing to hear what he wants to hear, which is maybe nothing at all. President Barack Obama's healthcare law is heading back to the Supreme Court. Justices on Friday agreed to review the legality of the subsidies given to people who have Obamacare right now. The text of the law says that subsidies were to go to individuals who obtained insurance through an exchange established by the state, but 36 states have not established exchanges, and people that got health insurance through those states are currently getting subsidies, and we're trying to find out if that's illegal or not. The subsidies are provided through state and federal online marketplaces, which are designed to allow Americans to shop for health insurance, and they provide tax credits to people who can't afford health care or do not qualify for Medicaid. Because the health law obligates Americans to have health insurance, these subsidies were put in place so that everyone can afford it. It is the Affordable Health Care Act. However, if the subsidies are found to be illegal, 5 million people will go without them and not be able to afford health care, thus undermining all of Obama's work. Some speculate that this might lead to an unraveling of the Affordable Health Care Act because all those people in 36 states would no longer receive subsidies. This news of the bizarre deals with China and Russia. I'm not super sure if this doesn't matter because I guess it could, but it's been way blown out of proportion, at least to me. At an event to watch fireworks on Monday night, Vladimir Putin made some of his own by flirting with the Chinese president's wife. After it was announced on TV, a hashtag started on Chinese social media, which caught a bunch of momentum until Chinese censors actually completely erased it because they found it to be damaging material. The flirting that Putin did with the Chinese First Lady was putting a shawl on her shoulders. Yeah, he put a shawl on her shoulders, which she immediately took off afterward, and I'm not sure if it's against Chinese custom and that's why it caught so much fire, but maybe it was ignorance on his part, maybe she was okay with it on her part. She corrected it really fast if it wasn't the right thing to do, but I mean, he put a shawl over her shoulders. Regarding local news, the elections just happened and the mayor of Fresno did not win state controller. The state controller is a seat that deals with a lot of fiscal properties of the state. During Swearengen's campaign, she said a lot about how she would help financial problems or policies in California, but her funding was cut from the Republican Party because there were other Republicans that they wanted to fund over her. On top of that, she was running against a San Franciscan Democrat in California. It seemed kind of doomed from the start, but aside from that, she did a really great job. The margin was very close, with Yi getting 52.8% and Swearingen having 47.2%. Overall, both candidates got over 2 million votes. Regarding civil rights and civil liberties, people in Alabama are scared that their civil liberty of hunting will be taken away, although it's just foraging for their own food. On Tuesday, people from Alabama are going to vote on the Fifth Amendment to their state constitution, which clarifies that the people have the right to hunt, fish, and harvest wildlife, subject to reasonable regulations that promote conservation and management of fish and wildlife and preserve the future of hunting and fishing. Some residents are worried that their hunting lifestyle will be cut out completely because regulations have been put in place on hunting, like buck counts and restrictions on using hunting dogs. However, a few people are wondering why this is such a big deal right now. A state representative said that she's completely outraged that this is actually a problem that's catching momentum because Alabama has a lot of other problems going on, and the last thing they need right now is a hunting law preventing something that might never happen, since state legislatures aren't that big of a threat to hunting anyway. Also, some devout hunters in the area are kind of skeptical about the amendment because it says that the state can have reasonable regulations, and that's kind of too ambiguous for them. So we'll eventually see how this plays out. For political beliefs and behaviors, the governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, has become the latest senior Republican to hint at running for president in 2016. Just 5 days after securing re-election for governor, he was interviewed about a pledge he made only last month to serve as governor for all 4 years. Walker backtracked. He said, "I said my plan was for 4 years. I've got a plan to keep going for the next 4 years, but certainly I care deeply about not only my state but my country. We'll see what the future holds." Already this governor is backtracking what he said to get elected as governor, just so he might be able to get elected as president. But Walker has two big factors working for him. One, he's a Republican, and two, he's a governor. Public dissatisfaction with politicians in Washington and the perceived negative connotation that people have against Obama's lack of experience before his presidency began in 2008 has boosted the chance of people who are already in a seat in office, such as governor, like Walker is. However, there's a lot of competition with other ambitious Republican governors, such as Chris Christie of New Jersey, Bobby Jindal of Louisiana, and Rick Perry of Texas. Concerning domestic policy, after huge wins for the Republican Party in the 2014 elections, conservatives in favor of immigration reform are warning their GOP counterparts they can't spend the next 2 years ranting against an executive order on immigration rather than protesting on their own bills. One GOP political operative warned that the party is falling into a trap on immigration. He described a hypothetical disaster scenario for the party in which the president takes executive action on deferring deportations. Then Republicans try to defund the program and potentially try to shut down the government. Essentially, Obama is threatening to enact deportation relief, and Republicans don't want that. In this case, the 2016 Republican primaries would be entirely about their stance on immigration, and this would force candidates to take a stance on whether millions of people should have their protections stripped from them that Barack Obama put in place. Regardless of this, Barack Obama has pledged to go on with this by the end of this year. It's sort of a, if you guys don't do what I want, I'll do it by myself kind of thing. And Republicans have said they could sue the president or even try to impeach him due to executive action, or even just try to deny him funds. Some senators like John McCain are pleading with Barack Obama to not do anything about this immigration stance and let the House decide whether we should move forward on immigration reforms or not. But some have argued that the Republican way of dealing with immigration is by not dealing with it at all, and that the president should do something about it. Either way, what Obama does in the next 2 months will dictate the tone of the next 2 years. Last is the Constitution. Same-sex marriages have begun in the Kansas City area after a federal judge ruled that Missouri's ban on gay marriage violates the U.S. Constitution and people's rights to due process and equal protection. This decision means that same-sex marriage licenses in the Missouri area are now being issued to Missouri's 2 largest urban areas. But officials across the rest of the state aren't following suit and saying that they don't have to do the same. U.S. District Judge Smith had written Friday that he was going to delay the effect of his ruling until it was appealed, but officials in the Jackson County announced later in that day that they would be handing out marriage licenses to gay and lesbian couples. Moments later, 2 men actually got a marriage license and got married. They had been in the office earlier that day and had been denied a license, but stuck around because they were so upset about not getting one. I'm sure they're pretty glad that they stayed since they were able to get married later that day. Hopefully the rest of the state will follow suit and allow same-sex marriage.